Welcome everyone to our ZYTO Wellness webinar, March 7th. We are here with Trey Hatch and I'm excited to introduce her, but first let's take care of just a few items of business and housekeeping. I want to remind all of you that we do this every month on the first Wednesday at 10 p.m. Mountain Time. Anyone can join. If you enjoy what you find here, share it with others and share our website, ZYTO.com, for others to register and join the conversation. We, of course, appreciate the wellness community and enjoy being a part of the conversation on a regular basis. Also, ZYTO is a wellness insights company. If you're joining us and you're not familiar with ZYTO, let me quickly just take care of a few other housekeeping items. ZYTO uses galvanic skin response to measure responses of the body, and we connect to the body to a computer to facilitate a conversation. These conversations are insightful, particularly to health professionals and health advocates who help facilitate decision-making for their clients and their patients. You can see our hand cradle on the table here. This is the device that enables that conversation to happen. Our hand cradle is regulated by the FDA, and we are not a diagnostic technology. We are an insights technology. So welcome. Thanks for letting me get through the housekeeping. Trey.
Hi.
Wow. So Trey and I have a little bit of a history, but before we ever met, Trey has been a TV chef for CBS and Fox affiliates. She's been working in the industry for over 10 years as a wellness coach. And she focuses mainly on intuitive eating and the concepts associated to that and teaching and empowering others to listen to their bodies as well.
That's right.
We're super excited to have you.
Well, I'm super honored to be here.
Thanks.
Thank you for this invitation, and
Yeah.
thanks to you for being with us too, because this is going to be super fun. a great use of time.
Yeah. No, we're excited to have this conversation and bring the value to everyone that we can. Correct.
Absolutely.
So really quick, Trey, you are the author of let me pull this up of Miracle Pill.
Yes.
10 secrets or truths to healthy, thin, and sexy. And ironically enough, there is no pill.
Right. It's a bit of a poke at sort of the cultural idea that we can have a giant change without making a giant change. And so, Miracle Pill, 10 Truths to Healthy, Thin, and Sexy. And it really is my story of losing 110 pounds without dieting. And then as a chef, I put in as much of my favorite recipes as I can, because I'm a enormous foodie. I'm completely aware I came to this earth for the food. So to live without restriction is sort of the message, and it's going to be a fun book. So it's a workbook. You write in it, you journal in it, you highlight it. If you use it right, it's all dog-eared and hammered up, and that's when you get the full benefit.
The full benefit from these truths. And absolutely, applying truths is always where the secret lies, right?
Yeah.
I have my own copy at home. I highly recommend this book. And in fact, Trey, you've been so generous as to offer a free book as a raffle that we'll be giving away today on the webinar.
Yeah, please enter. If you want to enter, go to my website at treyhatch.com, and that's TRES, hatch.com. And just send me a comment or a post on the contact tab, and within 7 days of this going live, we will select at random a winner, and I will send you a signed copy also, and I'll personalize it to you. So I'm really excited to be offering that.
That's excellent. Thank you for your offer and sharing with everyone.
Yeah.
So Trey, let's dive into our topic today. We are discussing reframing your relationship with feelings, food, and fulfillment. Let's start first with your personal story. Give us a little bit of background on how you came to this awareness and this reframing that's happened for yourself and that you now teach to others.
Sure. So 23 years ago, I had an aha moment while I was standing naked in front of a mirror in a hospital. And I was so morbidly obese, I didn't recognize myself. And I had dieted and abused my body in every severe way possible, including bulimia and anorexia. And clearly did not know how to manage my body. And it really was one of those catalyst moments where I decided I was going to go on a journey and I was going to learn. And my focus, because I had been on every diet, I was disenfranchised and disheartened by that approach. And I thought, well, what is it that my friends and family have? The people who don't struggle at all with their bodies, they don't have any angst about a pizza party, or they have an event coming up and are they going to fit in their dress? There's zero of that. How are they processing food? How are they thinking as they're standing in line to order their lunch? What are they thinking? What are they thinking while they're eating? What are they thinking late at night when they get hungry? How are they processing their experience with their bodies and with food? And I started to go on an exploratory journey of actually asking those questions and doing a lot of research. And 12 years later, it became the book. And subsequently, I've worked with thousands of people as a speaker and as a coach, helping them have that freedom, that same freedom that I achieved by losing 110 pounds. And that was, over 20 years ago, and really being at peace with my body since, not having the ups and downs. So my weight doesn't go fluctuating at the holidays or when I travel or when there's events. It's just very, very intuitive, and that is the crux of intuitive eating.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Your journey's very inspiring to myself. I want to quickly reference a quote from Trey's book, just because I think that concept is so profound. This idea of monitoring our thoughts, of understanding, how to make that shift in thinking. So from your book, you mention, the real challenge is changing our behaviors in a permanent way, seeing the world through a new lens. Shifting from one kind of person to a permanently healthy person is the real miracle in Miracle Pill. So you're telling us there's hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I like that.
Yeah. And, my approach previously was the sort of the 21st century con, which I call dieting. Because it really asked for so little. All dieting asks for is that you lose weight temporarily. And within the diet industry, their own statistics state that about 70 to 90% of all plans, programs, or implements, any construct that we impose on ourselves, it's going to fail in the sense that it's not permanent. And so the problem with dieting is that it sets us up for failure, because we go into the diet and it's like a mini vacation from those original behaviors that got us out of balance and got us not talking to our bodies in the first place. And it's not supposed to last. So then the diet ends, or we can't take it anymore. We've got to eat a piece of bread at some point. And then we return to those original behaviors that got us out of balance, but we do so with a slowed down metabolism. Because our bodies, anytime we restrict and we take things out that our bodies need, that our bodies are asking for, such as a carbohydrate, our bodies respond and say, oh, we must be dying in the wilderness, let's slow down our metabolism and save ourselves. And so we return to those original behaviors after the diet, and we do so with a slower metabolism. And that's why we find ourselves having these radical shifts in weight, and it's very unhealthy, it's not good for us. And the con is the idea that we only ask it to do a temporary thing, when in fact, the true miracle is that we can in fact have balance and peace and the absence of struggle or battle for our entire lives. And when we ask for something better, we'll get something better. And that's really what brought me to a platform of intuitive eating.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's an amazing. So you've shared your perspective on dieting. I know you have kind of a visual concept. Have we cued that slide of the boat? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It does illustrate the idea.
Let's discuss that for just a minute, because I loved that you shared that. Trey, you gave us that slide to share with everyone. I want to make sure we touch on that.
Yeah. And the idea being that depending on what we're going for, if you want to, lose weight, your class reunion's coming up in 6 weeks, and you want to lose 20 pounds, then intuitive eating is not for you. If you want to never have to lose weight again, never spend another dollar, be at optimal wellness and have optimal health no matter what comes your way, but to be at optimal and give your system the chance to be balanced and at peace and not taxed, then intuitive eating is that approach. And I love that graphic of stacking the deck against ourselves. And I think that's the difference between intuitive eating and dieting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Putting things in an order and in a method that's going to be long-term and supportive.
And if we can cue up my Zen rocks, because I want to go there next.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
the
let's go
alternate to dieting really is this radical and not very sexy idea of balance. Because any organism that gets exactly what it needs, exactly when it needs it, and in the proportion that it needs, will run it optimal. And so, as opposed to gearing up, everybody, right, January 3rd, we all go out and get a gym membership, or gearing up for, I'm going to be on a new program, and I'm only going to drink these shakes, or I'm only going to eat this bar, or I'm going to cut out this whole category of food from the whole diversity, the spectrum of food that exists in the world. And or I'm going to put these sort of random constructs on what I eat, when I eat, and what proportion. Well, anytime we do that, we're inherently telling our body, I don't want to listen to you. So I'm on the diet, and now my body says, well, I want an orange. And I say, well, no, I can't have that right now because I'm on the thing. Well, my body goes into deficit like we talked about before. It slows down the metabolism, and we are in a state of imbalance, and that doesn't end well. So the alternate to that is to seek for balance, which means having, and I'll pose this to you right now. What would you feel like in 6 months if you had exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, and exactly in the proportion that you need for your food, for your sleep, for your meditation, your spirituality, for your laughter and your enjoyment and your connecting with people? If you could have that, what would your life look like in 6 months' time? And what would it change? And that's the key to switching into a mindset of balance is the goal, instead of how rapidly can I lose weight, which is going to put me on it's going to head me down a rocky slope.
So your suggestion is that you create that outcome and you revisit that place or that outcome that you're looking for over and over again to motivate the choice?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because balance is about having over and over and over again met those needs.
And I think, as you posed that question to all of us, and, as I kind of went in my own mind to think about that, the word that sums it up is fulfillment.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet sometimes we worry. We go, oh, okay, that's great, Trey, but really, how am I going to get exactly what I need? Because frankly, I don't want to eat nothing but salad, or I don't want to give up my nighttime cookie. And
I don't. I really don't.
Right?
Nor my chocolate dipped strawberry.
And the truth is, we were designed to be in balance. None of us came to this earth designed cruelly to be out of balance. And so it's really a function of our basic neural pathways. Our brains are super efficient. The pathways we use become huge. And that's what we get used to. It's why we tend to drive the same way to work every day, or put on our pants the same way every day, or brush our teeth the same way. Our brains are really designed for us to be super efficient. So if the neural pathways that we set down are used again and again, that's what we'll default to. And yet, our bodies and our brains are designed in sort of a mind-body connection, so that our bodies can talk to us and tell us what we need. And yet, you're still with the whole, I don't want to eat salad every day thing. Well, the truth is that our bodies are designed to tell us what we need, and that will always taste the best. It won't taste the worst. And to illustrate this concept, I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
If you were dying of thirst in the desert, what would taste the best?
Water.
And why do you think that is?
Because it would satisfy.
That's right. And why would it satisfy?
Because that's what I need.
Yeah. I think that really makes that point, that what we need actually will taste the best. And it doesn't mean that pizza doesn't always taste good, and a taco isn't always yummy, and ice cream isn't all. It is. It does always taste good. It's inherently going to be good. But that sense of ultimate fulfillment, that sense of satisfaction, really resides in listening to our body, asking our body what it needs, and then giving it to us. And it satisfies on a very different level. And so if we start doing that, we reprogram those neural pathways and we start getting in tune with what our body's asking. And that's very powerful. It's very powerful. I had, like I mentioned earlier, struggled with both anorexia and bulimia. And in the process of deciding consciously that I was going to reprogram myself to listen to my body and ask it what it needs, it took about 72 hours to eliminate those prompts for binges, those prompts to overwhelm and escape. Because I started listening to my body, and my body, there was in fact one aha moment where I'm sitting at a really nice restaurant, I'm eating a really expensive dinner, you know, one of those sort of very shishi places, and I think it was a $40 meal. I'm like, I want to eat this thing because I want to get my money's worth. I don't know if you've ever done or said that. And about 6 bites into my, you know, osso buco with gremolata sauce, I was full. And I'm like, oh, crap. I want to get my money's worth, right? But then I thought, my body's telling me something, I'm going to listen. Please wrap it up, I'll take it home.
Nice.
You do that over and over enough, and the body naturally says, this is what I need, this is the proportion that I need, and this is when I need it. And it becomes the default. Yeah.
Strengthening that pathway by listening.
Exactly.
Okay. Let me take a break here. We actually have a question. Lorraine, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. Lorraine Lott is asking a question. Let's explore this for a minute with Lorraine. Yeah. She's a brave contributor here. Thank you.
Thanks for chiming in and being part of the conversation.
Trey, she's asking and sharing, my parents put me on diets starting when I was in 4th grade. I'm now 57 years old, and I'm tired of everyone telling me what to do. I can appreciate that. I am healthy but large. How do I change the emotion behind it all? Emotionally, I am having a hard time. I'm reading your book. I'm now doing the exercises in it. I'm hoping to be able to change my life. Thank you for doing this. So credit to that. But,
wow.
You know, emotion, that was kind of a next step I wanted to go into as well. So Lorraine, thank you.
Yeah. Lorraine, that's a long time from the time when you were a child to be sort of imposing some program after another, and that sounds like that would be a discouraging place to be after a lot of that. So thank you for bringing that up. With the statistics of how many diets fail, I think that most people who have been down that road have experienced that sense of
relatable.
Yeah, it's a very relatable question and comment. And so, I mean, you brought up the idea of emotion. Shall we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and let me quickly go back and revisit. She says, I'm healthy but large, and how do I change the emotion behind it all?
Okay.
You know, so what could be a follow-up question to Lorraine as she asks you that? I'm guessing that there's a tie in terms of the emotion, but is there an emotional, like, crux? Is there really one emotion that drives it all, or are there a multitude of emotions that we're truly dealing with and we need to work through the layers of that?
Well, without having the opportunity to, you know, direct some questions directly to you, Lorraine, and discover what is and is not happening with you, in general, what most of my clients deal with is that there's some fundamental things. Anytime we cut off from our body's messages and we stop listening to our body, or in my case, I was a heavy kid and I had to reactivate that neural pathway in the first place. I had to start asking my body to talk to me. So anytime we've disconnected, let's use that term, from our bodies, there's usually two things at play.
Okay.
And usually that is escape.
Okay.
And the other is control. And those are the things that really drive compulsive eating also. So I don't know if you guys have ever experienced even something super healthy, like, you know, you have a great salad, but then you realize, man, I'm just too full. I'm just too full.
Yeah.
It's under that category of really healthy and light, but it's too much. We've disconnected even with healthy foods sometimes. And what drives it largely are sometimes those coping mechanisms that we employ. We can implement them as children. We can implement them when there's, a crisis, something happens as an adult. But they are there because basically we're good people and we don't join a gang or murder kittens. Instead, we tend to create an unpleasant catalyst within ourselves that gives us an escape. Like one of my clients once said, she sat out in the parking lot every day at the grocery store and had her me time. And during that time, she would eat 6 to 7 donuts in her car. And one of the questions I asked her was, well, do you like them? And she goes, oh, I guess the first one, yeah. And I said, and what about number 4, 5, 6, 7? She says, no, they're kind of gross. And I said, and so what do you call that? And she goes, it's a treat because it's the me time. And I said, is it a treat to have something that you don't actually prefer?
Okay.
And we started getting to true preferences. One of the questions I'll pose to our listening audience
Please.
Is, what's your true preference on how full you like to feel? When I first asked myself this, I defaulted, without missing a beat, 100%. I want to be 100% full, right? That's what satisfaction must be. Well, in fact, 100% means the top of my stomach has that pressure in it. And if I were to lay down, I'd kind of feel a little bit unwell, and I get that slow lethargic, I got to take a nap feeling. After experimenting with it, I actually prefer to be about 65% full. At 65%, I can stand up, I can go to work, I can go chase my kids around, I can do whatever I want to do, and that's the optimal. And where I was previously having some distorted self-talk and saying, but then I'll be hungry again 2 hours later. Well, very unlikely I'm going to starve to death today. I've got a granola bar in my handbag and in my desk, and it's very unlikely that if I design my life so that I'm 65% full, I can't have an apple to grab later. I can't have something else. And so living according to my true preferences, it really is self-affirming. And Lorraine, my first step would be to ask you to self-affirm and enjoy your true preferences. So let's hop back to the idea of kicking compulsive eating.
Sure.
Because that really is the specialty in it. We talk a lot about that in the book. I talk a lot about that with my clients. But compulsive eating is fueled by certain emotions. Okay. And those emotions are regret and shame. Why did I eat that last night? Why did I do what I did over the weekend? I don't know if anybody can relate, but I certainly did plenty of that. And the interesting piece is that the emotion fuels the compulsion. Because, okay, hypothetically, let's say you're an alien. You land on the planet and you're given food for the first time. And you eat and eat and eat like a whole bucket of fried chicken. And afterward, it's too much, so how do you feel?
Stuffed, uncomfortable.
Okay. And what's your perception of eating too much on this planet as an alien?
Painful.
Okay. Are you going to do it again?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to.
Is there any shame or regret, or is it simply an experiment, right? You're experimenting with this planet.
Feedback loop.
That's right, feedback loop. So if we take the regret, the shame, the guilt, all that negative self-talk out of that inner dialogue, sort of our meta self that we're having, we can't fuel the compulsion, because compulsion is driven of trying to get an automatic response. It's about something reliable, something I can control. Now, we say, well, I don't know why I did that. But in fact, having regret and shame and guilt after we have to deal with the uncomfortable feelings of having something we didn't need or too much or something, that's pretty reliable. That's a reliable response. If I eat too much pie, I will always feel yucky and bad, and I can then bag on myself and criticize myself.
So there's another question I want to get to, but I want to bring this back to Lorraine for a moment, because, how do I change the emotion behind it all? It's like we're talking about a perception that is deep-rooted, into her life from childhood, that somehow she's not good enough.
Yeah.
And her ability to now step into the position of self-affirmation instead of that coming from outside sources that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and becoming aware of what was that trigger, you know, what was that emotional trigger that made me feel less than, right?
Yeah.
And then why do I keep creating that feedback loop?
Yeah.
And that's what you're getting at, right? I mean,
Exactly.
we're literally trying to recreate that feeling over and over again of not good enough or whatever the emotion might be, because that's what we know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
often we don't have
until we become aware of it.
Yeah,
right?
often we don't have another
But there
experience.
is another choice to make
Right.
in the matter.
So to instead, the next time there's any kind of regret over food or the lack of exercise or any of the things on which we sort of have negative self-talk,
Okay.
take away the negative piece and treat it like a lab-coated researcher. Oh, that's interesting. So I don't actually prefer that. And it helps us get to sort of like what percentage of fullness do you really like to be at? It helps us
Sure.
get to our true preferences
Okay.
of what do we like to eat, what do we need, when do we need it, and how much. And you know, I want to share with everyone that when I was doing my journey and learning, one of the most profound discoveries is that people who don't battle food at all, they experience food not only the moment on the tongue, but they experience it on the back end also.
Okay.
They taste it on the back end. For instance, does anybody here remember the last yummy meal you ate? And if you're tracing back to it, like I'm just remembering dinner last night, I'm still tasting it. But there's a front end of tasting and there's also the back end of tasting, which can go on for days. And people who don't battle food at all, they experience food and they evaluate it based on not just the front end, but also how are you going to feel 20 minutes later? Because, you know, it's not my first polka. I probably can project how I'm going to feel an hour after eating a triple pounder. Or versus maybe my body doesn't need that. Maybe my body needs the fruit salad. So I can project how I'm going to feel at the 20-minute mark, an hour mark, the next day. And so that's another fun exercise to try and play with, like within the next 24, 48 hours. Play with that and start to discover, do you actually have some true preferences of how you like to feel on the front end and the back end of tasting?
That's a really empowering question you just posed and gave everyone as a tool, you know, allowing ourselves to ask the question of our bodies and build that neural pathway like you talked about. Do I like this in an hour? Do I like this tomorrow? You know, I mean, most of us are just in such a go-go mode at this point, you know, in the way that we interact with technology and people and our time. It's, you know, we usually aren't that retrospective.
Yeah, yeah.
And that, you know, that kind of intuitive with ourselves.
There's that word again.
Yep, I love it.
Right.
I love
And
it.
so,
Trey, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so those 5 key questions really are underscore what intuitive eating is, and that's so what have I already had? Because basically we kind of all have an idea of the basic food groups in a day, and that we're going to need water and hydration and exercise and lots of plants and some grains and whatever. So what have I had and what do I need? When do I need it?
Yeah.
How much do I need? And basically, then while we're eating it, we can ask our brains to really give us feedback. Am I done yet?
Yes.
And I've shared with you sort of that bliss point of when you're eating, we tell ourselves, oh, but it's just so good, I can't stop. Or it's so expensive, or it's special, or Aunt Ethel made lemon pie, and so I have to eat it, the whole thing, because she'll only be here one day a year.
Sure.
Whatever those kinds of distorted thoughts are. But the truth is, when we've had exactly the right amount, our bodies and brains are designed to tell us. And I call it my bliss point, where I am satisfied. I'm satisfied on a whole sort of comprehensive level. And I can project that if I have more, it won't taste as good. It won't feel as good. And I've had clients at the onset, they're like, oh, no, it'll taste good. It'll taste good. And so one of the tests that we do is another fun takeaway. Try it. Start with the rule of halves. It's in the book, but here's the crux. Take half of what you need, Eat that and then keep adding to it a little bit until you hit your bliss point of exactly the right amount.
Nice.
And then go 2 or 3 bites after and rate the food. Scale of 1 to 10, however you want to rate it. Is it as good after you've met your satisfaction point as it was before?
Nice.
And it never is, because the tender mercy of our design is that we're designed to be in balance. So our brains and bodies will interface with that mind-body connection and tell us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that tool. Let's jump to a couple more questions.
Right on.
Stephanie is asking, how young can we start educating the youth on this? Thank you, Stephanie, for asking that question.
Oh.
You have kids of your own? I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Imagine Stephanie
long
sparing
is
kids a lifetime of
Sure.
feeling guilt about, eating too much or distorted messages, or feeling like I've got to go do something to my body to change it. All of that.
Or even allowing them to say, no, I'm full.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely. I mean, that,
Yeah.
I think we have a carryover generationally where we still see sort of that idea of, waste not, want not.
Sure.
But it's so empowering, and I see this with not only my own family, but every household that I've talked to and worked with, that when they're saying to their kids, what do you need? You come home from school, and the question isn't, what do you want? The question is, what do you need? What's missing? What did you have, what'd you have for lunch?
Sure.
And what's missing now? You want an after-school snack. What's missing? And it's really cool to start seeing kids putting things and framing them in categories. Well, I haven't had any fruit. Can I have an apple?
Cool.
Yeah. So respecting them when they're saying, no, I need a brownie.
But
'Cause
okay,
sometimes you do.
so let's talk about,
Sure.
your 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Right? Who's not very capable at communicating. I'm satisfied. How do you pick up on the cues of a 2-year-old? How do you, in order
Right.
to teach or affirm that?
Such a great question. Beautifully, everything is really designed for us to be in balance. I keep hammering that point home because it's so true. And the more colors on our plate, the more likely we're going to get a whole spectrum of all the fuel that our bodies require in order to be in balance. And so I know some kids are picky, and this is a challenge, but exposing children to the most variety of food possible, even when they're very, very young.
Sure.
More colors on the plate. That's kind of an easy tool. So chop up some purple cabbage and a carrot, and some chicken cut into little logs, or some apple slices, and a scoop of almond butter. There's a lot of color there, and that really starts to orient kids to the idea of diversity, a broader repertoire of foods that they will accept and that they'll start to seek out on their own,
Sure.
as well as if they only take a carrot and dip it in the almond butter and take a bite of the chicken, well, they're still getting a better diversity of nutrition, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Great question.
Yeah, Gail is asking a question also. So let me read this to you. What do you think about the practicing of elimination GMO foods and extremely inflammatory foods like soy, gluten, corn, that many of us as practitioners do and see have tremendous healing outcome for our clients, especially those who are dealing with critical illnesses and chronic illnesses?
Yeah.
How do you speak to that when there's possibly a need to reduce the burden, right, on the body for other reasons?
That's a great question. So the more information we have, the better. So the diversity of the whole food spectrum is optimal and ideal. But if we discover that our body has a real sensitivity to something, then that is a huge benefit to be able to not suffer and to alleviate pain that way.
Right. It doesn't create satisfaction,
right.
for sure.
The more we also know about the sourcing of our foods and about the inputs, and really what we're learning about is it's all about the soil and the seed. If we learn more about soil, we learn more about seed and what inputs are there, what inputs are not. It gives us better resources to manage. So a lot of people have said, so are we to only eat non-GMO and organic because we don't want to poison ourselves with pesticides and possible other poor outcomes from GMOs? And the bottom line is that if not only for your 2-year-old, but for your adult self, if you're putting as many colors on the plate, then you're not living off of white rice or noodles, one food category. If you're living off pizza every day, make sure that pizza is non-GMO and really, really good for you. But if you have an incredible diversity and you're eating with the seasons, and you're seeking out where you can afford it and where it's possible to eat the highest quality food. I have a family, and I can't buy organic every single time.
Sure.
Sometimes the broccoli is just, well, it doesn't look good. It's just not going to be good. So seeking out the best quality for what you can in your area, but to ameliorate the issue of any kind of food products that are perhaps treated with chemicals or pesticides, put as much diversity into the diet as possible.
Okay.
And that's very, very helpful. Cool. And then use the information we have. If you have feedback that you know helps you be more at optimal and more well, then use that. But embrace as much as possible, as much diversity as your body will allow.
Excellent.
And it gives us more fuel, because we're Ferraris. We're not, a beat up old Buick. I mean, I like Buick. I love Buick, but we're not, my grandma's old sedan, 2-ton Tilly.
Right.
We're Ferraris. Every single one of our bodies are the greatest design ever devised. So we need to fuel it with the most premium fuel possible, which means the most diversity of nutrition. And that's primarily comes from the ground. Doesn't walk on legs.
Do you, as you've coached so many people in your experience, there's probably people that deal with those kinds of things constantly, know, and I mean, ultimately, is that just another way of honoring and affirming the body and, the mind-body connection, in the sense that I don't feel good when I eat this, or I don't have the same level of fulfillment or satisfaction.
Sure.
I mean, is that
it wouldn't
part
be
of
my
the,
preference to have diarrhea.
Yeah, sure.
No, it would be my preference to have a really comfortable digestive process, yes. So if we find out more information, that's it. And we have such a wealth now. We're so blessed to have so much, so many tools and so much access to information. So we use it as much as possible, absolutely.
Right. Awesome.
But I think the trend in society is to cut things out, thinking that somehow that will be the secret. That will be my secret formula. If I just get rid of X, Y, and Z, whatever's trending today. And we can go through and name all the trends of the last 50 years. But when there's a clear medical need to eliminate one thing, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
Still incorporate as much diversity as possible.
Excellent.
And I've had friends who have been free of gluten for a time period while they've sort of healed some gut issues, and they've reincorporated healthy use of grains, even those with gluten, back into their diet so that they can have greater diversity. It's not possible for all people. It's not right for all people, but it's that embrace of diversity that's really helpful.
Awesome. I love the vein of foodiness in you that it just strikes a chord with me.
Let's talk brownies. Let's do it.
Right. Well, honestly, no, let's actually go back to this this set of questions that you posed. So this is 5 questions that we can all start to ask ourselves to become more aware, to develop this kind of dialogue, this inner dialogue about our true preferences. Trey, can you speak to each one of those questions?
Sure,
Okay,
sure,
That
absolutely.
would be great, and maybe expound.
Yeah. So the idea is to start out with sort of being aware of where we are today. So what have I already had, and what's missing? If I had a giant load of oatmeal for breakfast, and now it's lunchtime and I have one of those big deli sandwiches with the extra thick cut bread, well, that's a good portion of brain. It's probably satisfied a great deal of my grain requirement for the day, maybe half of tomorrow's. I don't know, it depends on you. If I hike a mountain today, I'm gonna need more. If I sit writing at my desk all day, I'm gonna need less, based on what we need. So I'm gonna evaluate what have I had already and what's missing, kind of like that question I put to my kids and my grown-up kids and everybody. What's missing and what do you need? And to discover those categories that are needed so that that's where we go first. And it's so tempting, if we're traveling, we're at a fancy place that's famous for its macaroons, or we're at a fancy place, it's famous for its steak. I had an experience where I was traveling with my husband, and we were at a very, very nice restaurant. I've been reading the reviews, and it was a famous steakhouse, and it was the middle of July.
Oh,
it was hot. It was, 1,000 degrees. My skin was melting. And I didn't need a really heavy piece of meat.
Sure.
And I listened to my body and I thought, well, what's missing and what do I need? Well, what I need is a salad and a little bit of fish. It was fabulous. I'll never forget how fabulous it tasted. It was incredibly satisfying. And I didn't miss out. That's the tender mercies. I didn't miss out. So what's missing? What do I need? And when do I need it? Do I need it now? One of the first questions that I work with my clients is, when do you like to have a treat?
It's a good question to ask.
Because do you want a big chocolate sundae at 5:30 in the morning? Well, most people would say, oh, no. And that response, that kind of gross response, is your mind-body connection telling you that that's not when you want it. Most people tend to say, well, I kind of like that macaroon I talked about earlier.
Sure.
I kind of like that around 3:30 in the afternoon. And that's naturally when our blood sugar starts to dip and we get a little bit of a lull. So, when do you need it? And I'm going to bring up treats because one of the things that when people are gearing up and they're like, I'm going to change stuff, is we get really ready to put food into good and bad categories. So let's just say something really controversial right out of the gate. There's no bad food. Twinkies not a bad food, but I may not need it more than once every 20 years, which is its shelf life. Hey, it worked out. So the point is, our brains and bodies are also designed for us to have treats. And some people need them once a week. Some people need a little treat once a day. When I was losing 110 pounds, I had a couple squares of chocolate every day, of premium, good, dark chocolate. And it took me about 15 minutes to eat it. And I was completely tuned in to tasting, and I felt incredibly satisfied. So when you need something matters as well. And then, of course, in what proportion. And that's listening to our body for that bliss point and that satisfaction. Try that rule of halves to sort of figure out what your true preference is of how much you really need of that chicken and rice, and what is your what is your true need on that? Yeah.
What does the serving look like?
Right. And then the last question, really, we were just talking about it, is am I done yet? And that's such a powerful thing to ask ourselves. So over the next 24 hours, try it. Just every time you eat, ask yourself, halfway through, am I done yet? And you might discover, I'll share this with you, when I was growing up, I had these brothers. I still have them. And they used to take an entire box of Cap'n Crunch cereal and pour it into one of those big melamine mixing bowls, those old ones that our grandmas used, and then they'd pour a whole jug of milk on it. And that was their bowl of cereal in the morning.
Oh, nice.
Right? The 15, 16, 17-year-old boys.
Right.
And so when I would have a bowl of cereal and it was only this big, I would think, man, I am really cutting down. And so it's very interesting to really tune in and be affirming to my own preferences. When I tried to use the rule of halves, and I discovered that, in fact, my portion size of how I prefer to feel and the exact right amount to feel that sense of satisfaction, both in the front end and the back end, it was significantly smaller. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Like a fifth of what I was eating. I'm like, I couldn't figure out why every morning I was like, oh, I just feel so yucky in the morning. Well, I discovered why that was.
Right.
So those 5
great
questions are super powerful. Yeah. What have I already had? What am I missing? What sounds good? And when do I prefer it? In what proportion? Which is also, am I done yet?
Yeah. Wonderful. Trey, let's wrap up the conversation and maybe open up for another few minutes for questions. So please continue to send those in. Thank you. I want to end our conversation with the perspective of hope. So we talked about, kind of our sharing an invitation to this webinar. Really, we wanted to address the things that that ultimately bring us back to a self-affirming place, and a place where, our relationship with food is safe, is healthy, and is happy. So help us to understand, give us a little bit of vision. What can that look like long term? I mean, you're living it.
It's a great question. Have you thought about that question I posed sort of halfway through about what would your life look like if you had exactly what you need when you need it and in the right proportion for the next 6 months? And what would that do to your experience? How would that free up your energies? Because most of in the intensive workshops that I have done, I've asked people, what percentage of your time is spent secretly in the back of your mind thinking about a negative thought about your body or about food or fantasizing about a certain food or worrying or stressing about what's coming up or what you're going to do. Some aspect of negativity in that relationship with our bodies. And people have said as high as 95% of their time goes to that. So what would it be like if 100% of your time were freed up to live your purpose and to do the other things that you were designed to do, that you were placed here to do, that you are gifted and that only you can do if you don't have any of that inner battle going on. And not, so the cherry on top is that with exactly the right amount and living in perfect balance, your body sheds what it doesn't need. Because our body takes the shape of what we ask of it. If I ask my body to be in perfect balance and in peace, my body takes the shape of being in perfect balance. Just like, you know, you look at those Olympic athletes we just saw on the Olympics, and they've been requiring their bodies to perform certain tasks, and their bodies responded accordingly. You know, speed skaters have a certain look, right, with their legs and their torsos. Swimmers look very different from that. And of course, you know, dancers very different from that. So our bodies take the shape of what we ask of it. So if your body is asked for the next little while to be in perfect balance, what happens in terms of the outside? But the real gift isn't weight loss or that I'm going to be trim and thin and, you know, wear all the clothing that I want and actually eliminate some of the health problems that are preventable if we get our weight managed and under control. But the real gift is the absence of that nasty dialogue inside our heads and the absence of regret and shame and guilt and having, okay, this is a big bonus, having fabulous pleasure all day long, every day.
Nice.
Because I get my bliss point met like all day long. And it's part of the design. You were designed to feel like ridiculously satisfied. So that is such a wonderful blessing, and I just feel so grateful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope you've all enjoyed this. Let me quickly look to see what other questions we're getting. We have one from Deb. Thank you. She poses this question: does the old blueprint ever quit fighting to come back in control, or will the conscious of messages from our body become automatic?
Such a great question. There's a lot of cultural messages about our bodies. Just go to the grocery store and look at every magazine cover. There's a lot of cultural messages about what we are supposed to be and how we are supposed to look. And you look on every one of those magazine covers and they talk about, 23 foods not to eat or diet. And all of it takes us away from listening to our body and hearing our body tell us how we're doing, what's missing, and am I done yet, and what do I need, and affirming. Imagine how affirming it is to say, yes, body, whatever you need, I'm going to give it to you. And it doesn't mean that you have to run out and run off to Whole Foods and change your lifestyle. If I need green that day and all I have, because I'm taking care of my sick mom, I can't leave. I got a can of green beans. Well, that's green. In other words, just meeting our bodies halfway, listening and responding. It's just incredibly powerful. And so there are cultural messages that we'll try and implement. But that's why the book is called 10 Truths, because we're back to truths. We're eliminating out some of the noise that is distorted messages that I got when my parents told me to diet. And that's the best they could, because that's what they knew. They love me and want me to be happy, and they want me to be successful. And so all the old ideas about sort of distancing ourselves from our body's messages, the more we hear our bodies, the more that becomes that primary neural pathway. Does that make sense? And then that's what we default to. And we can chuckle, and if somebody else can say, well, I'm going to eat that last piece of lasagna if nobody else is, because that's just too good. I'm not going to let it go to waste. If that's what they prefer, that's what they prefer. I know that I don't prefer to have fullness beyond my preferred point. And it's a really comfortable self-affirming place to be, and the absence of all the negative mental dialogue is my preference too. I hope that sort of speaks to does it ever come back? Yes, I hear it as well as you, but my truth is much louder. Yeah.
Nice. Hey, there's quite a few questions coming in.
Yeah, right on. Let's go through as many as possible. So I'm going to keep the answers short.
Yeah, yeah. Kathy sends in a question. If your body is telling you that you don't need water, do you need to drink it anyway?
Great question. Well, I think that might need some exploration.
Okay.
So, again, we're hearing, and there's a lot of articles about, lose 10 pounds by drinking certain amount of ounces of water per day.
Sure.
If you medically have some reason that you're not hearing your body's message, there are medications that suppress that. Then we need to sort of be aware of that and counteract it. If you're getting enough water, your body won't crave more water. So I need an enormous amount of, I'm an active person, I need an enormous amount of water, and I live in a desert. So I'm like, a shriveled up raisin lady. I've got to have water. So I'm always in deficit. So I can always default to that. So sometimes another trick is anytime you get a little munchy, but you really don't probably need more fuel, going for liquids and hydrating is usually a great way to go. I know that's not your question, but it's a great little tip. Have a big glass of lemon water and then see if you still are craving the pretzels after that.
Sure.
But in terms of whether or not you need water, if you ask yourself those 5 questions, which start with, what's missing? What have I already had? If you haven't had much water today and yet you're not thirsty, you might want to have a little bit of water and, fancy it up a little. Throw some raspberries in it, a mint leaf, a squeeze of lemon.
Look at how you make things so satisfying.
A cup of, take some of those dried hibiscus leaves that you can get at the health food store and drop them in some boiling hot water, and you'll have like vitamin C, antioxidant exploding homemade tea that's the most gorgeous crimson color. Fabulous. And so
So what I hear you saying is we need to have more fun.
Absolutely. Again, we get to have pleasure multiple times a day. How cool is that? There's no restriction. There's no bad food.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's go to another question from Chris. Thank you, Chris. Intermittent fasting is the latest eating trend for losing weight and also health benefits. What are your thoughts?
Well, I believe in going with the oldest design in the book.
Okay.
Which is the way the body has been functioning for likely hundreds of thousands of years. So we go to sleep at night and we give our bodies a break. And then what's that first meal we eat in the morning?
Break fast.
Break fast. When we allow our bodies to have a rest from digestion, and circadian rhythm is another real key trending science right now, where they're discovering that body clocks exist not only in our brains, but every cell of the body has a body clock. In other words, when your body is secreting insulin, you have a body clock that's set to do that, and it's really not set to do that at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we're really not supposed to be digesting at night. It's a long answer to your question. The answer is we are supposed to give our bodies a break from digestion. Now, is that supposed to be an 8-hour break, a 10-hour break, a 12-hour break? Well, I think it suits what I need that day. So I've had mornings where I've gotten up and I've said, no, I'm gonna do some of my work and I'm gonna go for my run and I'm gonna do that first because I just feel like I don't wanna eat yet. And I honor that, and my body feels imbalanced because I honor that. Now, if I start to use that as a construct, like, well, I can tell myself that on one level, but deep down, I'm just trying to cut calories. Well, then you're not really listening to your body. But whatever the right amount of break in your break fast is right for you. Some people do believe that they feel a lot more energized after having a specific amount of break to their eating, whether that's 8 hours or 10. And I do as well.
Yeah.
So I do recommend in the book, I recommend it now, go to bed empty, but not hungry. So design your life so that, design your life. If you need a little something an hour before you go to bed, so that your tummy is very peaceful and calm, and you don't lay down and have any kind of acid, then do that.
Sure. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that tip. We're going to take one last question.
Sure.
And then we need to get a book into somebody's hands.
Oh,
here.
fun, yeah.
This question comes from Sandy, and she asks, how much does willpower factor into this? Let me finish. I know when I'm mentally prepared for a change in diet or exercise program, I find it a lot easier to maintain my willpower. It becomes stronger, etc., versus when I'm not mentally ready.
Yeah.
So I can totally relate to that one.
Yeah.
It's about making the decision first, right? And then going into
Absolutely.
that pattern. But
And
how do you
like
perceive that?
you said, or I said at the beginning of this, that how do we make a change without making a change? And we
Yes.
have to sort of commit. I had an aha moment that set me on a path towards intuitive eating. And we do need to embrace that we are going to be open and teachable. So that those neural pathways do change, and we repeat enough times that we default to something new. So you talked about discipline, really. And there's a difference between hanging on to my diet with white knuckles and, when you're like, I just can't eat one more salad with chicken on it. I just can't do it. There's a difference between that and the truth about intuitive eating, which is so blissful and happy, which is I get to eat what's going to taste the best because that's what my body needs. And I get to eat it right to that point of perfect satisfaction and fulfillment because that's what I need. So in that case, would there be any sacrifice? If your body says, okay, you've been super active and now you want a brownie, and you decide when intentionally that you get the most satisfaction from the brownie, in my case it's middle afternoon, and you do it, you get incredible satisfaction. There's no discipline in that traditional sense required because it feels good and it's affirming. And it's not hard to do things that feel good.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's stop there. I need
Thanks
to
for the
announce our
questions.
winner. Yes, thank you so
Yeah.
much, everyone. This has been such a lovely conversation. And Trey, your wisdom is profound, and we truly appreciate you.
Thank
So
you.
Thank you.
I appreciate the chance
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
share
Yeah.
and hear some of these great questions.
Oh, yeah. Thank you all for joining us. So I've got just a couple of things to wrap up and really appreciate everyone joining us. We want to remind everyone that we have our next guest speaker, Leonie Baxter, who will be joining us from the UK. She is a lovely lady with years of experience herself in nutrition, in clinical psychotherapy, in health psychology. And the topic that she'll be discussing, which maybe is kind of like a great segue from this discussion to the next, is the topic of digestion, connections between energy, emotion, form, and function. That will be Wednesday, April 4th at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Visit our website, ZYTO.com, register for that webinar, and we would love to have you online with us live, or if you can't attend for some reason, register as well, and we'll share that information with you after the fact. Also, this is, Trey, we're going to invite you, along with all of our listeners. We just announced our global conference for 2018. It will be in October in Salt Lake City, Utah. October 19th and 20th. Again, you can register for that as well on ZYTO.com. And
I'd love to come. That sounds really exciting. You have so much great information.
It's always a pleasure to be in person with the community and truly like rub shoulders and learn things that just don't happen any other way. And having you here with us today is one of those treats. So thank you for sharing. And thanks everyone for visiting, and we'll see you all next month.